Welcome to the Sunday Shelfie. Hello, my name is Nikki. I'm the obsessive bookseller, and thank you for stopping by to watch a video. Today we are on week 7 of 7 of my Red Collection Sunday Shelfie series, and don't be alarmed, this is not the end of it. We still have a bunch more books to go in my unread section, my young adult, etc. If you're new to this series, I'll link the playlist down below. It has been a lot of fun to take you through my collection one book at a time, and I really appreciate all of the comments and support I'm getting from y'all. I love discussing books, so it's been just a ton of fun to generate conversation on the things on my shelves. So, let's get to it. Okay, starting the tour with the remainder of the Coven series by R.A. Salvatore that we covered in last week's video. I loved the first two. I was left a little wanting in the third one. It felt a little rushed. It took it away from what I thought made it special. But moving on, we have the bulk of my Brandon Sanderson collection. I have been slowly but surely acquiring everything in hardcover over the years because he's an all-time favorite. And a couple of these are signed. I got that one from Barnes & Noble. They were running a holiday promo. And then this one I just managed to find, sorry, a little shaky. This one came signed. It was unexpected, which is pretty darn cool. And then Oathbringer, Tor Fantasy, who I mentioned I got on their radar for doing a book review for Rochelle Mead's Game Board of the Gods like 6 years ago. They sent me an early copy of Oathbringer, and I was in ARC heaven. That is the moment where I truly felt like I made it as a book blogger. This was back before I started my Booktube channel, but yeah, that was one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. And I read it so slowly, trying to savor every minute, that it came out before I finished it. But they gave it to me 2 weeks before release date, and I know most people would have been able to finish it in that time frame because, come on, it's Sanderson, but I wanted to take my time with it. I didn't want to read it because I felt pressured to read it. Anyway, I mentioned this in my top books of 2021 as one of my favorite short stories I've ever read. I love that he released it in this cool little hardcover so I can have it on my shelves. So good. Much better than the one with Lift. Just saying. Okay, the rest of my Sanderson collection. Legion, The Lives of Stephen Leeds. This is one of the funnest compilation of novellas that I've ever read. He has like split personality disorder, and he thinks that all of these apparitions that he's seeing are real. And as a reader, you're not really sure if they're real or not, but he believes they are, and so he uses all of these apparitions to solve crime. Really cool. Finally picked up a hardcover of Warbreaker, and now I'm just noticing that I still need to find a hardcover of Elantris to complete the collection. Absolutely love those. Then we have Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I like this author quite a bit. This was a fun series for me. I think it's one of those that would be an excellent transition from those who love young adult fantasy to get into adult fantasy. Very accessible, a lot of fun. The second one is one of my favorite books I've ever read. Something about it just really sang to me. And I really enjoy V.E. Schwab's writing. I also read her Vicious series, but I don't think I liked it enough to own them. And then Steel City Magic by Wen Spencer. The first book is called Tinker, and it is such an interesting series. She's a mechanic. It gives kind of an urban fantasy vibe, but then some fantasy elements start to come in, and then it turns into a sci-fi novel. And it's so weird that you think this shouldn't work, but somehow it does, and it was a ton of fun. I read the first two, and it was so long between the release of those and when the third one came out that I just haven't continued the series yet, and I don't know if I have the energy to go back and reread. And actually, I've already tried once, and although I enjoy it, I have a hard time with rereads because I know what's going to happen, so I'm a little bit less invested. One of my all-time favorite books, The Emperor's Blades by Brian Stavely. I love him for the atmosphere he creates in his books. It's got a jungle setting, And then there's these training sequences with this band of fighters and these like armored winged birds called kestrels. They are so freaking cool. This is one of those that had incredibly good momentum through the whole thing. And yeah, one of the reasons it's my favorite. I did not enjoy the conclusion to this story as much as I wanted to, but luckily for me, he continued the series with Empire's Ruin as kind of a next generation continuation, and I'm all over it. Then we have my movie edition Lord of the Rings books. And over here, my very worn, sun-damaged version of The Hobbit. This is a classic now. I think it's an illustrated edition. And When the Heavens Fall, Chronicles of the Exile. 3 books are written in this series. I highly recommend it to those who love Malazan, but the only reason I don't talk about it more is it's supposed to be a 6-book series. The 3rd one came out 3 or 4 years ago, and I have not seen any attempt from the author to update on when the next ones might be available. So they're absolutely fantastic, but I might suggest holding off on reading them until we've got news of more books. It's a shame that that one seemed to have gotten dropped, and I don't know if it's due to the publisher and sales or the author. In any case, really loved what I read of that. I would reread those to continue if the author got it together. And then the first 2 books in the Stardock series by S.L. Veal. There are some very specific things that make you go, what? What was the author thinking when she wrote this series? But I'm willing to overlook that because I think a doctor operating on aliens, like all sorts of different biologies, is so freaking cool. So I love the medical aspect. Apparently the author was a surgeon in the army before becoming an author. So that right there, I love it when they bring a lot of credibility to their writing. So love the concept. I'm not defending anything else that's in there, but I had a lot of fun with all of the aliens. Alien creation in sci-fi is the thing that gets me to love a series more than anything else. And then Rachel Vincent's Menagerie series. This was really cool. If you like roadside circus / mythology / interesting characters, this is a cool series. It has a lot of flashbacks throughout, and it's one of the few where I thought the flashbacks enhanced the story rather than take away from. And it's kind of a burning mystery through the whole thing that culminates into an amazing conclusion. Absolutely love that one. Kind of a random, I don't know if I'd call it a hidden gem because a lot of people have heard of this author, but I definitely don't hear people talking about it a lot. The Misenchanted Sword by Lauren Swat Evans, one of the ugliest books on my shelf, self-published. So I've been known to be a little critical of self-published titles, especially when I was a bookseller, and it's like stuff like this, that is why. Almost all of the self-published books that we got here at the bookstore I worked at looked like this to one degree or another, and so I was quite critical of them. But the self-publishing market has come a long way in the last few years, and the books they are producing now are every bit as gorgeous as the trad pub, so what I once believed is no longer true. In any case, I love that author's writing enough to buy the ugly self-published versions. And one of my all-time favorite dragon series, Dragon Weather. Now, grain of salt, it has been a lot of years since I first picked this one up, but I just thought it was so cool. It has a lot of the classic fantasy tropes that a lot of people really like, but then you add dragons to the mix, and I think it was just an awesome read. And then a couple of the Legend of Esthar short, kind of standalone novels. I don't think Esthar was fully a series. I think he just kept writing things in that world. But this book was a ton of fun. The sorcerer or wizard in this book turns himself into a bunch of furniture, which goes running around the city, and his apprentice has to round everything up to restore him. Hilarious. And one of the earliest fantasy trilogies I read, Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. I liked it. It was one of those that had a decent momentum, and I liked where it went. Back before I read a lot of gritty stuff, which now I am reading all the gritty stuff, I thought this was grimdark, and people were like, what? So this is more like grimdark fluff. So if you like fantasy, but you're trying to get into some more edgier stuff, maybe this is a first step along the road to darkness, which I took and no regrets. And my beautiful lineup of Dragonlance by Margaret Wise and Tracy Hickman. I've got a couple of box sets here. This is one of those classic series that I absolutely loved when I read it. I can see myself picking this for my son when he's old enough to get into fantasy as one of his first steps, because it's very accessible to the younger crowd and one of the ones that got me excited about reading. And I've got these hardcovers here. I'm not going to pull them out because they're a little bit dirty. I found them in a used bookstore on my trek and haven't had a chance to clean them up yet, but they were too cool to pass up. Eventually, the series continued, and when I was first starting out as a bookseller, Tracy Hickman stopped into the shop, so I got a book signed by him. That was pretty cool. I did not enjoy the continuation trilogy as much as I would have thought, probably because it doesn't take place after the fact. It kind of goes back and tells the story in between some of these other novels, which I usually don't have patience for because, hey, I already know where things end up. I don't need to expand on anything. As much as I enjoyed Dragonlance, it's these other works that made me really appreciate these authors. So the Deathgate Cycle, admittedly, these are kind of dry reads. Like, they're not going to be ones that you're screaming about from the rooftops, but there's a lot of subtle, very cool things that's going on in here. The first 4 books focus on 4 different worlds, and then in the last 3, they start to converge together, and it's that sort of building momentum that I absolutely love. I know I've talked about it before. And then I read the Dark Sword trilogy, which is 4 books. And appreciated these authors even more. I really liked this tale. It was kind of atypical to anything I've read. I think that goes true with Deathgate Cycle too. It's not like anything I've ever read before. They were really original in a lot of ideas and the way they put the stories together. But it was in this trilogy that I realized that there were some through characters. Like, there's one character in specific who makes an appearance in all of these works. And that kind of thing is just so cool to me. And I have yet to read The Rose and the Prophet. It's the only set of theirs that I haven't gotten to yet, but it's on the list because I think they are rad. Oh, we're getting close to the end. We have my Murderbot collection. I absolutely love Murderbot. And I think all of the hype around these books are what make them difficult to recommend these days, because what I loved about Murderbot, I picked it up without knowing anything about it, and I thought it was so funny. And things that can surprise me as being really funny really stick with me. But if someone had handed me Murderbot and said, oh my gosh, this book is so funny, you should read it, I probably would have read it and gone, could have been funnier. They oversold it a little bit. So I think the hype for this one is the reason why a lot of people picking up now aren't enjoying it as much, if all that made sense. You really can't win no matter what you do, it seems. And I'm just realizing I've got them in the wrong order. Or maybe I did that because that's when it takes place chronologically. Whatever. Then The Cloud Roads by Martha Wells. If you want world building with a lot of original flora and fauna, which is the type of stuff that just drives me as a reader, I love reading about completely alien new places, this is an excellent pick. Now, I didn't find the main character particularly relatable, which is laughable because he wasn't supposed to be. He was totally alien in a totally alien world. But I just, felt kind of at an arm's distance from him the whole time. But as far as creation goes, It's one of the coolest ones I've ever read, and I probably will reread eventually to continue the series. There we have it. The end of this week's Sunday Shelfie. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed the tour, and I hope to catch you next week. Bye.